Hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of your Hope-Filled Perspective, where it's always our goal to restore hope, renew minds, and empower listeners to live in your God-given identity. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Bengtson, and I'm thrilled when you decide to spend a few minutes of your week with us. I'm excited about the series that we're currently in. It's called the Sacred Scar Story series. You know, my book has released Sacred Scars, resting in God's promise that your past is not wasted. So each of the guests that I have on during this series are here to share of experience that they've gone through that's painful, that's maybe produced some wounds, but in the hands of a redemptive God, it has brought forth beautiful, sacred scars. And my guest today is Lori Vober. She suffered a hemorrhagic stroke at the age of 29 and then developed epilepsy as a result of the stroke. She's a survivor, overcomer, connector, and passionate about sharing hope with others. With the right perspective, attitude, and perseverance, we can stay unstuck and keep moving forward. Even with her difficulties, Lori and her husband, Danis, were able to become adoptive parents to a sibling group of 3. And Lori's journey and books can be found at lorivober.com. And we'll put all the information about Lori and her books in the show notes that you can find at drmichelleb.com. Welcome to the program, Lori.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm just absolutely thrilled to be here. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Well, when I decided to do this series to really showcase people who have gone through painful, wounding experiences, but have come out on the other side to reveal God's goodness and glory and the beautiful sacred scars that He brings, I knew you were one that I had to have on the podcast.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. Thank you. Yes.
You know, what I have found out through working with thousands of patients, as well as in my own personal life, and the hundreds of people that I've interviewed on your Hope-Filled Perspective, is that frequently some of our greatest areas of ministry actually come out of our greatest areas of pain and woundedness. So I would love it if you would share with our listeners the significant event that happened to you that caused either physical, emotional, relational, or even spiritual scars.
Oh, absolutely. And you hit them all because really, honestly, the journey really started with the stroke at age 29. My husband and I were just shy of our 5th year wedding anniversary. We were trying to start our family, trying to get pregnant. I had just transitioned my career from corporate America. I was in the airline industry at Northwest Airlines. My background is corporate marketing, sales, and customer support, and I just transitioned to our church. We were trying to slow life down and thought, oh, great, my plan is to slow life down and start a family. And the plan actually was to save my life because 3 weeks into that new job is when I had this hemorrhagic stroke. Thankfully, I was a Christian, but my journey took a completely different turn medically, emotionally, mentally, and God had me in the palm of his hand at that point because as I look back now, I see he not only saved my life, but he had started that faith journey long before then so that as I progressed, I could learn more and more how to depend on him. And I truly have. It's just, I would not be the person I am today had that stroke and the epilepsy and then the adopted kids on top of it have come into play. Every single thing we go through, we have a choice of whether we're going to get stuck or we're going to move forward, if we're going to depend on him, and how we're going to look at it. And I'm just so grateful that he's allowed me the opportunity not only to go through the fire, but to become closer to him through it.
And that is a choice. When we
Absolutely.
go through painful trials, we can either lean into God or we can run the other way. But He's not going to chase us. He wants us willingly to come to Him. But you know, I've had a similar experience. Recently, I was interviewed on someone else's podcast about my book, Sacred Scars. And they were very sincere when they asked, Michelle, why do you think God allows His children to go through some of the most painful trials, and for some people, trial after trial after trial? And I can only speak from my experience because I don't claim to know the whys and the wherefores that God's plan, but I know for myself, when things are going well, I have a tendency to go, I got this, God. I'll let you know when I need you. But it's when I go through the trials that are so dark and I'm not sure how I'm going to get through it, that's when I'm like holding on to every nugget that the Lord has given. And it sounds like that was the case for you as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I always say trial offers opportunity. And I think so many times we don't dig in and look for the opportunities. We don't reflect on what is outside of our box when things are going well. And it's when things aren't going well that we're willing to think differently.
That perseverance, God tells us in his word that perseverance ends up yielding the blessing of his mercy and compassion. But sometimes, especially right after a painful trial hits, it can be hard to persevere. We live in such a vending machine, instant gratification society, and we're generally speaking pretty pain averse. So choosing to look for the opportunity is one that I think sometimes people have to mature into. So I would be curious, in what way do you think going through that significant medical ordeal that still affects you in some ways today, because I know
Absolutely.
you personally, in what way did that experience hold you back, cause you to experience guilt or shame or fear, or maybe even limit you walking in freedom?
I think it's been a journey of discovering my limitations, honestly. At the very beginning, I think many people who have medical challenges and abrupt medical challenges like stroke, we all have different emotions and we all process them differently. And some get extremely angry and extremely upset at the very beginning. I was not like that, and I'm grateful I wasn't, but I thought at the very beginning, oh, okay, and I think it's because of my God granted me that perseverance from the very beginning. I just thought, okay, I always like to exercise before. I can exercise. If I can, I if there's therapist is there that's willing to work with me, we got this, no problem. And I even remember telling my therapist, oh, 3, 5 years down the road, perfectly recovered, no problem. No one clued me in that 21 years down the road, I'd still have a disability. This would still be therapy every day. This would be a lifelong journey. I think the emotional, the mental, and even the physical, it took a journey for it to hit home of how hard. And so the grief that I've gone through of my loss has also been a journey. It didn't hit me right away. And so I think processing that grief and loss has been a journey that I've had to go through over time. But I think it's also helped me to recognize and really work with other survivors on the importance of that and the importance of tackling your grief and your loss of what you go through in order to move forward.
Yeah, you and I are very similar in our perseverance. I've had a couple of people call me tenacious on steroids, and I get that from my mother. She was definitely that way. But I have to admit, in all honesty, being very vulnerable here, I'm grateful that when my chronic pain and health journey started, I'm grateful that I didn't know that I
Mhm.
would still be battling it a decade later. I think it would have been harder for me to maintain that hope and to continue pushing in because I had the faith that God would heal. And I do
Absolutely.
believe He can heal. But I've also come to realize that sometimes God is healing another part of us before we get the healing that we so desperately want. So I'm grateful that he didn't clue me in, that no doctors clued me in, that, actually, Michelle, short of a miracle from God, this is going to continue to get worse. I'm so glad I didn't know that in the beginning. But I'm
Absolutely.
really glad that you touched on grief and loss because I think sometimes people associate grief and loss with the death of someone
Mhm.
that we care about. And that certainly is the case. But there's also experience of grief and loss, whether it's grief over the loss of our dreams, over the loss of our physical functioning, over the loss of relationships who may not have been willing to stand by us through the process. And so I'm
Absolutely.
glad that you mentioned that because so many people actually go through grief and don't recognize it for what it is. But I'm
Yeah.
also very grateful because I believe that God has given us grief as a gift
Mm.
to allow us to come to terms with the fact that something didn't go the way we wanted, and He can bring healing through that.
Absolutely. And until we get to that point where we actually say, okay, I am upset and I need to get through this grieving process, we really can't fully move forward. And we think we're moving forward, but emotionally, there's a barrier there. And so you really do have to go through that process. And you hit on every single one of them. And there has been, and there's, there has been a lot of loss. There's been a lot of loss of dreams and the kids, yes, we adopted and it's been wonderful. And I tell my kids all the time, they gave me an amazing gift of being mom, but I still didn't get the dream of being a biological mom. And there's so many, but God gives us so many many miracles, many miracles. And we have to look at that. And we have to, when God doesn't give you the biggest miracle of your heart, you have to be okay with that, and you have to thank him for what he has given you. And I look at that a lot, and especially because I have a disability still, and have to know that if he had granted me the desires of my heart, which was full recovery, I would not have the journey I have today, because people would look at me and say, "Oh, great story, but you're fully healed, so how can I really believe you?"
Yeah.
But it's obvious when they see me, I do still struggle. I still have a disability. And so God has granted me, in his infinite wisdom, this disability that, although many times it's hard and you understand the pain that goes along with it, um, there's so many things that he grants us that we have to be willing to say, okay, God, you are God. So let him be God and
Yeah.
trust him.
Would you share just for a minute so that our listeners who can't be with you in person understand what it is that you continue to struggle with in terms of a disability?
Sure, absolutely. So when I did originally have the stroke, I was completely paralyzed on the left side. So woke up from a 17-day drug-induced coma, completely paralyzed on the left side. Today, 21 years later, I can walk. You saw me in person. I can walk. I'm very independent, but I do still walk with somewhat of a limp because of my gait pattern. I do have pain from time to time in my knees and my hip. I don't have full range of motion yet in my upper extremity and arm, so I still go through therapy for that, and that causes discomfort sometimes in my upper traps, my shoulders. So we go through Botox and dry needle therapy, which is, for those that don't know, that's kind of like acupuncture. So I'm always thinking outside the box, what therapists can help me, what can we do that I haven't tried. And so I tell my stroke community, because I speak monthly in different hospitals, that it is a lifelong journey. From the day this has happened till the day our good Lord takes you home, you will always be in a journey of this, either mentally, emotionally, or physically. Get that outside of your comfort zone that you're ever going to be fully recovered, but it can be a glorious journey. And he has taught me so much. He has brought so many connections and friends in my life, and I never thought I would be an author or speaker. This was never originally in my wheelhouse, but I'm so thrilled that he's given me this opportunity. So you just never know.
And friends, you may be going through a difficult circumstance right now, whether it's physical or it's relational or something else. And while Lori didn't experience the anger at God, I want you to know that even if you are, our God is big enough to handle it. He
Ab-
created our emotions, but it's a matter of what do you do with it. And so I would encourage you that if you're angry, tell him. He
yes,
knows anyway, and he
yes.
can handle it. I remember a long time ago, I was raised in a church that kind of gave me the impression of God being this old man on the judgment seat with a gavel, and that if I got mad at God, he was going to strike me down. And so I didn't express my anger until finally I broke. This was a couple decades ago, but when I finally expressed how angry I was and disappointed and frustrated because I wasn't in society's view normal, it was as if he whispered to my heart and said, "Well, I'm glad that you're finally talking to me. Now we can deal with it."
Yes,
So God is
absolutely.
big enough to handle your anger. So if you're experiencing anger, we don't want you to feel guilt or shame
Yeah.
that your journey has been different from Lori's, because all of our journey is similar and yet different. But I would encourage you, take that to God.
And
But
I
I
think,
am curious, Lori, in what way did this hold you back or limit you in walking from freedom? Were there times that you experienced fear or some other significant emotion that maybe kind of held you back, which is different from where you are today?
oh, absolutely. And I have to say, you're one of the ones that taught me this. And so I thank you. And that's vulnerability. For a very, very long time, I was not vulnerable with anybody. I had my stroke in Minnesota. That's where we lived. But soon after my stroke, my husband lost his job, and he was also in the aviation industry. So we moved to Arizona. So our life started all over in Arizona. And then I developed epilepsy. So I had no friends, I had no support system. And so for many, I was just this young woman that had a disability. And many adults don't really know how to handle other adults that aren't like themselves. And it's not that they're cruel, they're not mean, they just really don't know what to say. It's almost like when someone passes away, you don't really know what to say to someone. It's the same way with someone with that's not like themselves, right? They don't want to say the wrong thing, they want to be your friend, but they don't know how to be your friend. And here's someone that was just out of a wheelchair, and then I was having seizures. And so I thought, okay, if I just really work hard at therapy and I persevere long enough, I'll fit back in with my peer group. No one ever know that anything's wrong. So that's what I did. I just didn't say anything. Well, it doesn't work that way. And so I lost so much time not saying anything, but then it was just such a lonely journey. And, in hindsight, I wish I had gotten mad. I wish I had stomped my feet. I wish I had screamed out and said, hey, because in the inside I was screaming. And what comes out as a scream to ourselves is just barely a whisper to other people. And no one was hearing me. And then when I finally started talking and saying, hey, I need this, I need that, people were like, really? Is something wrong? What's going on? We didn't know anything was wrong. And I was like, how did you miss it? How did you not see what I needed? But vulnerability is so important. And you taught me that. And I commend you because you do it in such a positive way. We don't have to be negative about our vulnerability. We just have to be honest with people. And in our honesty of how we're feeling, it offers connection, it offers support, it offers the people to bless you. And it's almost like the domino effect of smiling to a perfect stranger in a store that you don't know. People don't know what to do with that, but if you do it, it's almost like a domino effect. They'll smile back at you because they're just so taken by surprise that a perfect stranger smiled at you. So I just have learned. I've learned so much in my own pain of not being supported, how to support others, and then how to go on and try and teach others the importance of being supported. So I
And
think that's the biggest thing is the emotional support that I never got and that I so desire now.
and when we're vulnerable, what I have found is that it gives other people permission to be.
Yes, yes, yes.
So over time, how has God healed the wound and formed a sacred scar and used this experience for good? That's the essence of my book, Sacred Scars, is that we're all going to go through something, all going to go through something painful or embarrassing or shameful. But
Yes.
in the hands of a redemptive God, He can bring about a beautiful sacred scar. So, how has He done that for you?
Oh, I have to say, first of all, you have to give yourself grace. You have to give your own self grace because it is a journey. And I'm still on that journey. Some days are great and some days I'm like, really, I'm really here still. Why am I still having a hard time with this? Yesterday I was okay with this. Why today am I having a hard time with this again? I gave it to you yesterday. So grace to yourself and grace for your family members and those around you that are just trying to help you because sometimes they don't even understand because you don't understand. But I think what I've learned in the sacred scar for me has been the passion and the purpose God has given me through this journey. And without this, I would not have drawn closer to him. I would not have depended on him. But he has shown me that every challenge, every trial that we go through is part of his master plan and his purpose for us. It's just a matter of us getting out of the way of our plans and saying, yes, God, I understand this didn't fit in my plan, but it did fit in yours. It didn't change your plan. We just have to look and say, okay, what is this and how does this still fit into your master plan?
Yeah, that's the key. His plan, not ours.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
we have a tendency, or at least I do, I will speak for myself, I won't speak for you, but to make my plans and want God to fit in it. Scripture
Absolutely.
says the man makes his plans, but it's God who orders his steps. So I'm grateful when he actually takes over and course corrects.
Isn't that the truth? Yes.
Lori, what flipped the switch for you? Or in other words, how did God show you that this painful trial that changed the whole trajectory of your life now serves a redemptive purpose?
Writing, writing and reflecting changed everything for me. I was not a writer, I was not a blogger, and I wish I had. I wish I had blogged and written from the very beginning of the stroke journey through our adoption. We adopted 8 years post-stroke is when we decided to adopt, and we adopted 3 kids because my husband and I are both only children. So we were lonely our entire lives. So that's why we decided to adopt a sibling group. Didn't know that's what a sibling group was until we adopted them. But I didn't write until years and years later. And now I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, God, you have given me so much healing. I think so many times I write just for my own healing. And then if anybody else gets anything out of what God allows me to publish, I'm grateful for, but it really truly is for myself and my own sanity. So truly, this is a journey that He has blessed me with, and if I can use it to help anybody else, I'm grateful for that.
And I know that he's using you to minister to other stroke patients as
Mhm.
well, because you're able to share with them from a place of knowing that
Yes.
so many others could not. Other people can offer advice or quote unquote words of wisdom, but there's nothing quite like hope and encouragement from someone else who's already been there. And
Yes.
you know, and you understand, even though the way a stroke manifests is so completely different depending on what kind of stroke and what part of
Mhm.
the brain that it happens in. But still, that grief, that loss, that physical change in your body allows you to minister to other stroke patients. And I'm so grateful that you are using what the enemy intended for harm to
Mhm.
encourage other people.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, if a listener is resonating to our conversation today, maybe they've gone through a devastating diagnosis, or maybe that's not part of their story, but in some way they've experienced something that's brought about physical, emotional, relational, and/or spiritual pain. What hope-filled perspective would you want to leave them with today?
To really trust and depend on your God. And if you don't know Him, please get to know Him because He is the only thing that's going to get you through. We are in a society where we're going to pick up our phone first. We're going to try and go to others. We're going to depend on social media. We're going to post something and then we're going to be disappointed when people don't comment and like what we've said. And that is not our true happiness. Our true happiness, our true hope, our true rope is truly our God. And so I have found people are going to disappoint us and they don't mean to, but they are in themselves just humans. And at our final hour and the day we die, it's the one person that created us and the one person that's waiting on the other end for us that really matters.
Lori, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come on your hope-filled perspective and share hope and encouragement for others who might be walking through a difficult circumstance today and wondering, does this count me out for ministry? Has God forgotten about me? Can any good come from this? Because I think your story says, yes, it can. God has
Absolutely.
not forgotten you, but be willing to surrender what you expect it to look like into the hands of a merciful God who's got a good and perfect will for your life.
Absolutely.
Friends, I'm going to make sure that we put all the information about Lori and her books and resources in the show notes that you can find at drmichelleb.com. I really hope that you're enjoying the Sacred Scar series and that you're finding hope, encouragement, even if the stories are different than what you are or have gone through. Because the constant thread is that if we will turn over our pain and our hurt to God, He will heal and bring good from it. So it would just delight me to no end if you would consider sharing some of these episodes with friends who are going through a difficult time and just need to know that good can and will come from it if we surrender it to God. Until we meet again next week, it's my hope for you that you have a hope-filled week.